This past weekend, we had two releases from two legendary bands. On the one hand, we had Amon Amarth, and on the other, we had Soulfly. One of these bands is being criticized for being stale and operating on cruise control as they've reached their veteran status. And another one of these bands is being praised for still delivering brutality after all of these years. What's the difference? Welcome, metalheads, to Heavy Metal Philosophy. I'm your host, your sommelier of extreme metal and blue-collar philosopher, John Barbas. Make sure you stick around to the end of the episode for this week's Riff of the Week. And not only that, but I've got an update for you all concerning a writing gig that I've accepted with Metal Digest. That's not the subject of the video, so we'll do that at the end. Let's get into the meat of the subject right now. I've been thinking for a long time now that metal is a young person's game. But now that I'm no longer young, and now that I'm involved in metal Twitter with my fellow olds, I've come to think, well, maybe it's not only a young person's game. You know, what made me really think that was Metallica. When I was a kid, Metallica was everything. I was obsessed with Metallica. I loved Metallica. They were the heaviest band in the world to me. I just could not get enough. And then they put out Load and Reload. Now, don't get me wrong. I cherish Load. Not so much Reload, but Load as an album. I think it's got some of the most beautiful songs I've ever heard in metal. But it's not the heaviest album. Not even by a long shot. You know, it got a lot of criticism. And as a Metallica album, I definitely can see that. I think if another band not named Metallica had released the album Load, then it would have been a masterpiece, an all-time classic. We'd all be singing the praises of that album. But because Metallica released it, it disappointed a lot of people. That's for another episode, but that sort of started the trajectory of Metallica not being as heavy as they were on Master of Puppets and Justice for All, the Black Album. And I thought that's just what happens. I thought that when these artists get old, when they get into their late 30s, 40s, they start to soften up a little bit. They've got families, they're financially secure, they're less angry with the world because their needs are met, and, you know, they don't have that fire lit under them because they've already made it, so they're not fighting to make it. I thought that was just the natural progression of things, and I wasn't mad at Metallica at all. I was like, yeah, well, they've matured. They want to explore more things creatively. They don't want to just E minor chug anymore. I get it. And so I figured that I would just listen to younger bands. So that's what I did. I started listening to younger bands, and that took the place for me. There's all these young bands at the time that were supremely heavy, and I was like, you know, no problem. I get to listen to this stuff. It's super heavy. I can still listen to Metallica. It just scratches a different itch for me now. So, you know, I was listening to bands like Opeth and Arch Enemy. And then again, 10, 15 years later, Opeth starts no more screaming, no more death metal. They've gone soft. They make clean music now. They're real jazz and 70s prog influenced. And dude, I love Opeth. I love the new records. You know, do I love Blackwater Park the most? Yes, of course. But I like the new records too. As a music nerd, they thrill me with their, you know, theatrics and twists and turns and just prog mastery. But it's just not heavy anymore. And then Arch Enemy didn't go soft like Opeth, but after Angela left, I just felt that those first couple of records with the new singer weren't as heavy. They just lacked a little bit of the power, I felt. Some people would disagree, but that's fine. And so I was like, okay, here we go again. The next generation of bands, they're getting older, especially in the case of Opeth, and they're wanting to do different things. They're not angry anymore, and you know, they've exhausted their inspiration at that type of music. So, okay, I get it. And I'll just find the next generation of heavy bands. But this past few 3-4 years, legendary acts like Cannibal Corpse and Immolation and Carcass have just put out supremely brutal records. And I mean, in the case of Cannibal Corpse, these guys are damn near 50 years old if they're not already 50 years old. So how are they able to stay that heavy, that extremely deep and dark when they're all family men now? You know, the new Immolation record is nonstop beat you to death. The new Meshuggah record, I mean, could it get any heavier than that? And they're well deep into their veteran careers. So I was wrong. There are bands that can stay heavy, they can stay aggressive well into old age. How do they do it? Because to me, I just took it for granted. I remember reading an interview with James Hetfield, and he was talking about the longevity of Metallica and how great it was. And really the only comparison is the Rolling Stones. And James was saying, you know, all due respect to the Rolling Stones, but they don't play what we play. So I don't see us being able to still do it in our 70s the way that they have been. So I just thought, yeah, that's a part of getting old. I mean, you know, you don't see Hetfield really like headbanging really hard anymore. You don't see, you know, Kirk Hammett really headbanging hard anymore. And Trujillo always did his crab thing. He's not really a headbanger to begin with. But fucking Corpse Grinder still is the top headbanger in all of metal. There's nobody that can beat his headbang. And again, he's like 50. How does he do it? Other than being a genetic freak with his enormous neck. And then this all really came to a head for me this week, listening to the new Amon Amarth, listening to the new Soulfly. And one of them makes me want to bang my head really hard. And the other one, I'm like, yeah, this is cool. The new Amon Amarth, it's cool, man. I like several of the songs on the record. But there's a couple where I'm like, I mean, it's not that heavy. I'm not sure that they're even trying, you know. I'm not saying that they're not trying to make good music. I'm saying, do they care about being the heaviest band anymore? They've sort of carved out this niche for themselves as the Viking guys. You know, they're the guys at the festival with the big Viking ship, and they put on the big theatrical show, and, you know, instead of a mosh pit, everybody's in the pit rowing. You know, they've carved out this identity, and I just feel like maybe they care more about serving that than they do about writing the heaviest riffs. And what made me think that is there's this like sea shanty sort of drinking song on the record, and it's a cool song. You know, we all love sea shanties, but the main riff in it, it sounds like that standard blues gallop, except for it's a standard metal gallop. It's like when you get a guitar and you take your guitar 101 classes, the guitar teacher's like, okay, this is how you play the blues. 1-4-5, gallop like this.
Blues like this.
And then if it was a metal DVD that you were learning guitar from back in the day, it would be like, okay, this is metal, and here's the way you gallop. It has that sort of stock rhythm to it. And now later on in the melody part, they do their Amon Amarth thing, but right there, I'll try to play it right here. It's just this real standard sort of riff. But that's a sea shanty. Do sea shanties have like innovative riffs? No. So they're doing what they're supposed to be doing when they write a sea shanty. Meanwhile, the new Soulfly record kicked my ass. It's fantastic gym fuel. From the very beginning until like the last two songs. They get a little soft in the last two songs, but till the last two songs, it's just like, damn, how does Max do it? This guy's so old. He's a gray beard. He's a legend of the genre, you know, an elder statesman. He's the guy that's taking the next generation out on the road with him, man. God bless Max Cavalera, taking out bands like 200 Stab Wounds. I mean, Metal could not ask for a better dude than Max. And he's still showing these young kids, like, bro, this is what heavy is. This is what a groove is when you write heavy shit. I mean, this new Soulfly record is a shining example of the sort of power that I want to feel when I listen to metal. And it's still angry. How is he still angry at his age? Now, I don't know what he goes through in his life. So maybe he's got good reason. He seems like a really happy guy whenever I watch him in interviews, and he seems like he's so nice to everybody around him and so chill. So I don't know, but the music still kicks ass. And I'm like, okay, so maybe I was wrong. Maybe metal's not just a young man's game. There's a lot of old heads on metal Twitter that are teaching me a thing or two about death metal. So, hey, maybe just the genre has matured to the place. It's really only been around since the 70s. So maybe metal has gotten to that place now that it's 50 years old where it can be multi-generational. I mean, let's look at the original heavy metal guys. You got Black Sabbath. Anything Tony Iommi does is still heavy. So I guess that's a shining great example. But the other bands, the other first metal bands like Iron Maiden, well, Iron Maiden was never brutal to begin with. You know, Iron Maiden was more about the technicality of the music and the epicness of it. You know, it was pre-thrash, pre-death metal. So to me, it doesn't really matter how old they get. They don't have to try to be heavy. If they were to try to be super heavy, it wouldn't be Iron Maiden anymore. And so they put out a new record last year, and all the Iron Maiden fans loved it because it was an Iron Maiden record. The new Amon Amarth, the Amon Amarth fans are probably like, yeah, it's all right, but Twilight of the Thunder God is still the best, right? So in closing, I just want to point out that we've got a new Arch Enemy record coming out, and we got a new Behemoth record coming out real soon too. And the two singles that I've heard off the new Behemoth record, they're artsy. I appreciate the way they sound artistically. They're not brutal. And I don't know if that's just, well, let's put these forward as the singles because they'll catch on, and maybe the rest of the record is brutal. That's kind of the way their last record was, I Loved You at Your Darkest. You know, they put out Bartabella as a single, and then later, once I heard the rest of the album, then I heard, you know, songs like God Equals Dog and, you know, Wolves of Siberia. But still, most Behemoth fans would say that it's a step down from the Satanist. And I think Behemoth would say, yeah, but the Satanist is our magnum opus. Like, we can't put that out every time. And so I'm really curious how this new Behemoth record's going to sound. And Arch Enemy really won me over when I saw them live opening for Behemoth a few scant months ago. Here we'll have, at the end, you'll be able to click on my review of that concert if you didn't catch it. But they totally won me over. I was blown away with how powerful Arch Enemy was. And I was like, well, maybe now they're starting to hit their stride with this new lineup that they have. You know, now that they've got Jeff Loomis in the band, and this is several albums in for Alyssa now. So maybe they've caught their stride. Or maybe I just didn't give them a fair shake after Angela left. We shall see when the new record comes out. I'll try to be objective about it and make a judgment there. And I'll tell you all how I feel right here on Heavy Metal Philosophy. All you have to do is subscribe and you'll catch that. Now, before we close and before we do the riff of the week, let's just do a quick channel update, tell you about some announcements that I have, and then we'll do the riff of the week and close real quickly. So if you're following on social media, all my links are in the description. You will already know that I accepted a writing position at Metal Digest. So I've got my first review up there right now. I am now a published writer. I'm super excited about it. I'm excited about the access to some of the bands I'm going to get by working with Metal Digest. We're going to have reviews, of course, but interviews. And that's what I'm really excited about. I'm going to be able to interview a lot of these bands. I can't say anything yet, but when I got the list of bands that we are working on to get interviews, I was like, really? We got these bands? Hell yeah. You know, it's not Metallica, it's not Slipknot, it's none of those huge bands. But if you watch my top 5 best new metal of the week episodes, it's bands like that. You know, to me, they're big. It's like big for the underground. You know, you'll see what I mean once I can say which bands that I've interviewed. But I'm so excited about that. The editor and the creative director both like the podcast, and hoping maybe we can do some sort of collaboration, maybe write a article about heavy metal philosophy in Metal Digest. We shall see. You know, I'm a new member of the staff, so I'm not trying to take over or anything. We'll see how it goes as I write more articles. After a year of doing this, it is starting to open up into more than just a podcast, and I have you all to thank for that. Y'all just helped me cross 666 subscribers on YouTube, so thank you so much for that. And we're just going to keep trying to make this podcast better, get more access to more metal that I can share with you all. You know, just keep setting new milestones. My next goal is 750 subscribers. So if you like metal the way that I like metal, hit subscribe, hit like. Thank you so much. Now let's do the riff of the week. In honor of old bands that are still crushing it every bit, if not more heavy than the new guys, I have to go with my 2021 riff of the year, Cannibal Corpse, Contamination, Contagion. I will use this as the riff of the week any chance I get. It's one of my favorite riffs of all time. And think about it, it's coming off of their latest record from their long, illustrious career. That's how badass Cannibal Corpse is, still providing me with holy shit riffs all these years later. So enjoy the riff of the week. Remember, read philosophy, listen to metal. I love you.